United States submarine base at Key West, Florida. A dispatch that quoted President Truman's press secretary, Charles Ross, as saying that President Truman has no knowledge of any secret project by this government that would give substance to the existence of such objects. Ross also said that both the Air Force and the Navy deny that such objects exist.
Hi.
Hi.
You know, hey, what's up? My name is Noelle, and after this episode, I'm going to take my happy ass to the Winco and get some NyQuil to take a shot of so I can sleep through the night.
You know what? I'm going to take my happy ass downstairs where I have NyQuil and do a shot of it with you in solidarity.
Hell yeah, girl. That's what I'm fucking talking about. You know, before we get into this topic, I actually used to have a severe problem with NyQuil in high school.
Like you would drink it for fun?
Every night. It's the only way I could sleep.
Oh, well then I have that problem now.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, I know. I thought you were going to say something fun. Like one time I took antibiotics with NyQuil and I woke up and felt like a gorilla and just was like, "Hup, hup, hup," and like walked around dragging my hands.
Kinda. That's what it's like when you have a dependency on it. I go in these phases of dependencies on sleep aids. In high school, it was NyQuil. And then I was prescribed Ambien. And then I had Ambien blackouts, which were scary. So then I stopped taking that. And then I just wasn't sleeping. And then I tried ZzzQuil because that was new on the market.
Yeah.
And they're such fucking liars because they say like non-habit forming. Is it semantics? Like they say non-habit forming, not like non-addictive because it like actually is addictive, but you can potentially break the habits of addiction. Is that,
I don't
do you know what I mean?
I think they say it's non-habit forming because there's technically no science in saying that any of the ingredients get you addicted. But you know what I'm addicted to? Fucking being able to go to sleep, bitch. So now what?
Well, I think it's like an addiction in the sense of you cannot sleep without it. Like when I was drinking ZzzQuil every night, it was just like the good old NyQuil addiction in high school because I could not sleep without it. And I would just sit there. I would sit like planking in my bed, just with my eyes closed, but my pupils beating through the skin, looking straight up at the ceiling.
Yeah, I alternate between like Benny, a NyQuil, or a ZzzQuil. But I can't, like, I try to raw dog sleep. Just
can't do it.
I can't do it. And I've asked the doctor and they're like, have you tried not stressing? And I'm like,
I love that.
No.
Yeah, I love
Can
that.
I have something to help with stress? And they're like, no, try exercise. And I'm like, I can't keep doing this anymore.
Also, I'm the person who like, I go to the gym before bed, I'm up for 2 days straight.
Yeah.
I'm juiced out of my fucking guts. I'm just climbing the ceiling.
Yeah, because all the endorphins and stuff are firing off, and your body's like, "I'm ready for more." Because
I'm ready for
predators
who
run our prey down and exhaust them. But sleep is the prey, and I can't catch it.
Dude, my anxiety has been so bad lately, which is crazy since I'm on anti-anxiety medication. But I'll might be insensitive to say, but whatever. I'll lay in my bed as if I am surviving guerrilla warfare tactics in Vietnam. Like, I am clutching my fucking rifle, dude. I'm tweaking. I'm losing my fucking mind.
It's so hard because I think you and I have talked about how we can gaslight ourselves into being like worried. And my partner clocks it so fast because I'll be like, oh, I had this crazy nightmare. And he's like, oh, it's because your dad was a little stern with you and he thought he didn't like you anymore. And I was like, yeah, that's not why. Yeah. Or at work, my boss was like, hey, you're doing a really great job. And I'm like, oh, he's just telling me that because he wants to butter me up before he fires me. And it's just like, like, bloop. And people are like, look on the brighter side of things. And I'm like, oh, that's not an airplane. That's a meteor coming to kill me finally.
Yeah.
It's always worst case scenario. And I don't know how to snap out of it.
I was tweaking so bad in bed last night. It was like 4:00 in the morning. And then once you get to that point, you start going, if I go to sleep right now, I'll only have 3 hours of sleep till I have to wake up. You know what I mean? You start doing fucking back of napkin math.
Yep.
And I didn't hit like actual sleep until like 7 in the morning. And then I was like, oh, great. Now I have to get up. And I'm just, I, something's going to happen where whatever thin veil of sanity I have left is going to snap. And I'm curious what that day is going to look like for me because,
dude,
I'm right
it's like
there.
when I watch Hoarders and they're like, Kathy lived a normal life until this happened. I'm like, hey, that's happened to me. I'm like one inconvenience away from like snapping psychologically. So I'm with you, and I wonder what it's gonna be.
Yeah, what it's gonna look like.
I think right now it's just being like bitchy and obnoxious is like how I'm currently snapping, and I'm like, where I'll wake Oliver up and I'm like, do you like me? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, probably lying.
That's what a liar would say.
Yeah, that's gaslighter. And then I like scuttle out of the room backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you on that, man. Well, good news is that we're not the only people who have been fucking crazy throughout human history. So to talk about today's episode, people have been predicting the end of times since we put our mouths to someone's listening ears. One of the earliest known apocalyptic traditions comes from Zoroastrianism. Do you like that?
This is just not what I expected the topic of this episode to lead into. And once people find out why we're talking about Zoroastrianism, you could, if this was the millionaire question on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, they'd be like, what else? We're like, yeah, I would not guess the topic. Anyway, sorry, keep going. I'm just so excited. It always leads back to Zoroastrianism.
I was going to say it always leads back to Zoroastrianism.
It's never a mannequin, and it's always the Zoroastrians.
Like straight up. I went from knowing nothing about them to my whole world is consumed.
It's everywhere. It's like the Masons.
Oh my fucking God. So Zoroastrianism, a religion founded by the prophet Zoroaster, is in ancient Persia. Zoroastrian texts, such as the Avesta, describe a final renovation of the universe called Rashokurti, something like that, where the forces of good will ultimately triumph over evil, leading to the end of days. So this is one of like the earliest apocalyptic stories. Jewish literature, particularly texts like the Book of Daniel and later the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I didn't realize the Dead Sea Scrolls were about like the end of times and the apocalypse. I didn't know that. I just thought that's the name of what they were like found in, the Dead Sea. Who knows? So the Book of Daniel and later the Dead Sea Scrolls features early end times predictions. These writings often involve visions of a final judgment and the establishment of God's kingdom on earth, which apparently means the end of the world. Early Christians, influenced by Jewish apocalyptic thought, developed their own narratives. The New Testament's Book of Revelation is a prime example, describing a series of cataclysmic events leading to the return of Jesus Christ and the final judgment. Philosophers like Hesiod circa 700 BCE.
The whole eyeball is just popping out of her head.
It's like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Words are hard.
Dude, I can't.
They're the hardest thing they're the hardest thing that I have to deal with.
God forbid.
Sounds like a first world problem. But
God forbid it's not just like the words like and I'm out.
Yeah. Just like, well, some of this shit you can't sound out.
I know.
There's no finessing the phonetics on this.
I try. So and this is the name of it, in his quote, Works and Days, he predicted a future where human morality would decline, ultimately leading to a catastrophic end. Stoic philosophers such as Seneca also discussed the eventual destruction of the world, often in terms of a great conflagration or fire that destroys the earth. The Maya of Mesoamerica had a complex calendar system, And one of their calendar cycles, the long count, was often interpreted by modern readers as predicting the end of the world in 2012. However,
that did scare me.
Did it? Were you scared by the Mayan calendar?
I was scared, and I think this is probably where I first scratched the itch of the dark web, where I was like, I got to figure this shit out. And then it turns out that it's it's on a cycle, so it just resets technically, and then I wasn't scared. But I did drive around on the end of the world day, like it was the end of the world.
Doing what?
I went to heebie-jeebies, and I picked up my comic book hold, and then I listened to Boston's foreplay/long time, like it's been such a long time. I really might the
fuck. That's your end of day?
Yeah.
Is picking up comics and listening to Boston?
Hell yeah. Like what's your end of day? That was a great day.
I don't know. I'd probably do heroin.
I still think about blasting Boston and having my comic books and just being like, this is it.
Yeah.
I want to go out on mediocrity. And I say that in mediocrity because, like, if I can still have a good fucking day by listening to comic books and blasting Boston, I should be okay. And I am still comforted by both things. So, you would do heroin. Love that for you.
I think I would like do heroin and go to a theme park.
Okay. I would, hold on. Sorry, my office was too dark and it was starting to bother me. And I couldn't
get scared.
I was afraid of the dark. No, I don't think I would do drugs because I'd have such a bad trip and then I'd be like, oh. Wasted a day.
Yeah. Maybe. I guess we'll find out when we get there. But as Chelsea mentioned, scholarly consensus also holds that the Maya saw this date as the end of a cycle rather than an apocalyptic event.
I should have read ahead, but I wanted to be excited.
It's okay.
Thanks.
You've relived a moment and shared it with us.
It was great. It was great. What would your last day look like? Comment on the Instagram of this episode.
Tell us who you're more like. Chelsea getting comics and listening to Boston, or me freebasing and then going on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. And of course, every city has a few Bible thumpers on Main Street corners screaming about the end of times. As long as there has been humanity, there have been people saying it's ending tomorrow. But there was one end of times conspiracy that had everyone believing to a certain extent. And that was Y2K. And before I get into the episode more, because I like derailing us, I also want to say this episode was inspired by me watching a Vice documentary about the end of the 1990s. And they briefly mentioned Y2K. And I remember Y2K. I remember the mumblings of semi-panic. I remember this was when we were living in the Bay Area and we had like a big block party in like our cul-de-sac, and we had snuck, like we as in me and the neighborhood kids had snuck these. They were chocolate shots, so they were in the shape of mini liquor bottles, and then you would pop.
Were you in like third grade?
Yes, girl. We thought it was the end of the world, bitch. Grow up. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I had a very different end of world experience.
Well, I had like one and I was like, this is awful. But we snuck those little chocolate shots. And everyone was like just partying and it was good vibes all around. But even as a child, I heard the mumblings of like, what's going to happen when it strikes midnight? So I never really understood like what it was all about, what people were actually afraid of. I didn't know what they were actually afraid of. Like,
all right, well, I was 30 in Y2K, so I remember.
You were on Wall Street.
I do remember being scared. I went to my friend Ryan's house, still a friend. Hey, Ryan, friend of the pod. I went to his house, and then we got super distracted playing Star Wars, and we would play Star Wars by getting the cardboard rolls out of wrapping paper, and then we would turn them into lightsabers and play. That's actually how I got Sith Lord. for my Instagram handle because he misspelled Sith Lord on his, and he wrote Sith Lord. Deep cut. He's also the one who gave me the brand on my butt.
My God. He is such a key piece of lore in your life.
Dude, his mom and my mom were pregnant at the same time. And his older sister is my older sister's best friend.
Whoa.
So, anyway, at his house playing Star Wars, Sith larded it up. And then it was like, it was past midnight. Like, oh, we missed it. And the adults were like, yeah. So we were like, let's see if the world made it. So we ran outside and went to the neighbor's house and knocked on the door. And they answered and we're like, we're just checking on people. And they were like, go home. And then we were like, oh, we thought we would get in trouble. And then we went back to his parents' house.
And that was also the end of door-to-door knocking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What happened to being neighborly?
I remember someone at school went, hey, I'll see you next year. And I didn't know what they were talking about. And they're like, because next year's on Tuesday. And I was like,
I hate when they hit you with that. I hate when you're like clocking out for winter break as an adult at your job, not in school, and they go, see you next year. And I'm like, no, you won't, because I'm going to have put a gun in my mouth.
No, you won't, Jennifer. Because I recorded this conversation and I'm sending it to HR along with the bloody bullet I put in my brain.
So exactly.
So you drank as a child and I got mildly reprimanded by an adult and I thought I was going to be grounded forever.
Yeah.
And I made it out alive.
We lived different lives.
Very different lives.
But why did Y2K stick? So it was one based in a tangible reality. And I don't say that to sound condescending, but imagine this time where we had technology advancing at a rapid rate. Computers weren't giant machines that took up entire rooms at NASA anymore, but personal machines you could have in your home that connected you to information immediately. I feel like our little lizard brains were not ready to handle that big of a change that fast. It was like we walked out on two legs out of the caves again. You have to remember that we went from horse and buggy to the Hubble Space Telescope in one lifetime. The first mention of Y2K was in 1958 when an IBM employee and computer science major, Bob Bember, discovered that there was a legitimate issue that could arise with a year 2000 bug.
Bob Bember sounds like they work at IBM.
It reminded me of Ed Kemper and like Bumblebutt.
Little bumble. Yeah, he's like a little bumblebutt. And he goes into his boss's office and he pushes his glasses up and he drops his papers as he walks in and they scatter everywhere.
Well, actually, you guys, I think we're going to have a problem with the year 2000.
And they're like, get out of here, Bember. And they're like, don't let the door hit you on your way out. And he stumbles out. And he's like the Office Space guy who's constantly getting his stapler stolen.
Literally. Also, reference to Office Space, that specific one. There is one of the only timely breakdowns of Y2K in that movie when that main character is talking to Jennifer Aniston at the whatever the knockoff Applebee's that they were at was called. And he's telling her what he does for a living. And he goes, oh, I just sit in front of a computer all day and change the zeros to 1 to prevent from Y2K.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's another little beep. So anyway, computers were insane machines used as a byproduct of World War II at this time. And holding computers' memory was extremely expensive. And it was also bad for the environment, but we don't know that until now, I guess. So in order to cut cost and be more effective, they removed what they thought was redundant info in the form of removing the last 2 digits of the year numbers. So early computer programs stored years using only the last 2 digits, an example being 98 for 1998. The concern was that computers would interpret 00 for 2000 as 1900. And also just a note here, Y2K, the abbreviation was Y, obviously year, 2000, K as in kilo. The more you know.
It's not just fashion.
Yeah, it's just not talking about like wearing bubble shoes and having blow up plastic see-through chairs. So Bob figured as the technology advanced, computers would become more accessible and this little numbers problem would just be resolved, right? With the updates and continuation of technology. Rather than having things hit like a massive halt. He assumed that the bug would just naturally rectify. Unfortunately, that wasn't true for the majority. Companies had no reason to upgrade because the machines still worked. And frankly, just as we still see today, people didn't really know what to even do with all of this technology. So imagine these like 20 to 30-year-old computers or machines, whatever you want to call them. And the people using them, companies, businesses, whatever, they barely understand their function. Like they know how to use it enough to just get their daily tasks done, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we see this all the time with like the never-ending, horrifically played out joke of like, I get paid to show my boomer boss how to open a PDF file, right? Same thing. So if you think it's bad now, think about how it was then. Worse. Now, fast forward to the late 1990s, this potential bug was becoming more of a reality than conspiracy. While some businesses invested heavily in rectifying the number error, time was running out. We, as a collective had for the most part put this problem off for 42 years. It was feared this would cause widespread chaos in systems reliant on computers, from banking and power grids to transportation and communication. Some other honorable mentions were power outages, disruptions in transportation, shortages of essential goods, prison gates would open, dams would flood, nuclear missiles would launch by themselves.
I distinctly remember people wanting to hoard food because they were like, well, all these computers determine the delivery routes for semis and everything. So they're not going to know where to go. And I'm like,
yeah.
But now you think about it, I'm like, how did they figure it out before? And computers were not that advanced at this time. So it's also like...
It literally was as simple as fixing like the numbers from zeros to ones.
Yeah. But we were terrified.
Yeah. And they weren't totally off base, all of us panicking. There was a genuine fear that the moment the year 2000 hit, all money in banks would be inaccessible. And not in the sense of it goes poof and disappears, but in the sense of computer error, where the bank servers and computers would calculate the money's interest based on the time and date. If the computers were to clock back to zero, the interest would likely be all over the place.
Yeah, you can't times by zero and keep your money.
That's what I'm saying, girl. To prepare, many people stocked up on supplies, like Chelsea said, food, water, survival kits, and weapons. Like I said, some businesses did invest heavily in updating their computer systems, and governments did plan ahead. In February 1999, the United Nations set up an international Y2K cooperation center. In December 1999, the United States and Russia opened a joint center for the year 2000 strategic stability to try and avert accidental missile launches or nuclear attacks.
That's so crazy. This is the stuff I did not know, that that anyone higher up was legitimately scared about this.
Yeah. The Federal Reserve ordered the printing of an extra $70 billion in paper money, about $255 per person in the U.S., in case there was a run on the banks. The Chase Manhattan Bank set up 27 command centers to monitor its network around the clock. Citigroup opened a central command center in a secret location. And just as my fun little Y2K story, when I was in high school, I couldn't tell you the teacher's name, but I remember walking to that class as a freshman and being told this rumor about this teacher's husband. That in 1999, he had taken all of their money out of the bank, turned it into gold bars, sold their house, moved to an isolated cabin in Tahoe, and buried the gold bars on the property.
That's fucking insane.
Yeah. Do you have any Y2K stories of people being preppers?
No, because my Uncle Fred is a computer genius. And I remember he came to Utah to visit, and my mom was like, kind of worried about it. She's like, they're kind of freaking us out on the news. And I distinctly remember him saying, Y2K is not going to be a problem. We've already fixed it. You should be worried about leap year. So I had my can kicked down the road for Y2K, where I was just dreading up to February.
Yeah.
But no, we didn't have any. I can't believe I did not have anything like that. I think if anything, my parents maybe bought a little bit more bottled water, but that could have been a different time in my life. And I just can't place the date.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. If you have a crazy Y2K story, let us know.
Yeah, I knocked on my neighbor's door and I thought I was going to get in trouble. So
that was
my Y2K. That was my Y2K story. Yeah.
You were affected.
Barely got out alive.
Historians will look back at this time and see it as potentially one of the first examples of what we now know as fake news. Or maybe embellishment, whatever you want to call it. Creating panic because the news knows these people are not or lack the ability to look into these things themselves. Was there a reason to be worried? Sure. Was there really a reality where the world banks would allow money to vanish or airlines would allow planes to fall out of the skies? No.
No, if the corporations were not going to let anything happen to their investments.
Nope. Now remember, the 90s also brought in personal computers. So it wasn't just graduate journalists reporting the news, but you with a computer and a blog.
I was literally just thinking, this could have been Alex Jones's like real time to thrive, you know? If he could have just entered in to saying that we were all going to die in Y2K instead of harassing the families of Sandy Hook, that could have corrected our shitty timeline that CERN broke.
Yeah. I would like to know what he was doing then. But just like Alex Jones, in a pattern we're all too familiar with seeing happen with our families on Facebook, there was something to gain by prying on generations of people who were still used to the old ways of receiving information. Demon of the podcast, Pat Robertson, was one of many televangelists who had lots to gain from this. He released a bundle package that you could purchase, which included his video, quote, Preparing for the Millennium, and his book, quote, The End of an Age, in which Armageddon is triggered by a meteor crash. He warned his listeners and watchers on the 700 Club that Y2K would bring societal collapse. And Chelsea, I have included a picture for you of what that bundle package looks like.
Yeah, so it looks like we have Preparing for the New Millennium and then The End of the Age. And they both look
like
a
sci-fi.
Little Scientology sci-fi looking. Also, I Googled what Alex Jones was doing during Y2K. He incited a panic riot. So...
Oh, he was doing Alex Jones doing it.
Hell yeah, he looks like he's like 18, but he was definitely bip-bopping around. And Bill Cooper critiqued him on the radio.
Oh my God.
Isn't that fun?
Some things never change.
But these books also look like the Left Behind series.
We're going to talk about the Left Behind series in a second.
Well, then I have an anecdote for that.
I can't wait. So, Minister Tim LaHaye started selling his Left Behind novel series. And this is a quote from a Time article titled The End of the World as We Know It. The Millennium Bug Could Bite VCRs, ICBMs, and more. Doomsdayers say it's all in God's endgame. Published on January 18th, 1999. So yes, I crawled to the archives, bitch.
Ooh.
Here it goes. The Left Behind series chronicles life on the eve of the Second Coming. Genuine Christians disappear to heaven. Everyone else is abandoned to suffer a terrible earthquake, wars, and the whims of the Antichrist, aka UN Secretary General Nicola Carpathia of Romania.
Yeah, I read that book.
Collectively, the books have sold more than 3 million copies. LaHaye also offers maximalist warnings about Y2K. It, quote, very well could trigger a financial meltdown, he warned recently in an online chat event, quote, leading to an international depression, which would make it possible for the Antichrist or his emissaries to establish a one-word currency or one-word economic system which will dominate the world commercially until it's destroyed. And before I let Chelsea tell us about the Left Behind series, if the Left Behind series wasn't enough for you, you could also check out such titles as Y2K equals 666 or Spiritual Survival During the Y2K Crisis. I've linked them both for you, Chelsea. But tell me about the Left Behind series. You read it?
Yeah, so I read it around the time where I was also reading like the Da Vinci Code. And the Da Vinci Code, yeah, and Dan Brown has like other kind of religious coded books. I think there was another one like Mystery on Area or something. It doesn't matter. But my parent, like if I wanted a book, my parents would buy it for me because like why not? And I think my mom went to Barnes and Noble and they had a book. They had one of those like end caps that was like, if you like the Da Vinci Code, try this. And then she grabbed Left Behind. And I didn't know it was like super Christian, but it did scare the bejesus out of me. But part of it is because a guy's plane, all of a sudden everyone's gone. And then there's a journalist and they basically are chasing down the Antichrist. And that was it. And I barely remember any of it. But I read it. Apparently, and it scared the shit out of me.
The Left Behind series was like specifically like published and released in anticipation of Y2K because there was this whole subculture of like preparing for the end of the world that was happening in conservative Christian and right-wing Christian conservative, whatever you want to call them, circles and spheres. And he was definitely one of them.
Yeah, because Dan Brown, his books, like he had a book about finding like the Ark of the Covenant or something, I think. So there was so much shit because this happened when I read these books. I was in like 9th or 10th grade. So it was like a little bit, it was definitely removed from Y2K, but only by like a few years. But the amount of books that hit the cultural zeitgeist about the end of the world or bringing biblical things into history, like that's what the Da Vinci Code is proving that Jesus had a bloodline, right? Through fucking artifacts. And all the other books were the same. And so there was this, I think this really pushed the idea that there is an agenda that we can't see because we're not quote unquote educated enough that shows and proves Christianity in ways that powerful men throughout history have tried to hide. Like Da Vinci knew it, so he tried to keep it hidden. And then that's the exact same thing as these books, was basically the elite pulling the veil over our eyes, and we just weren't, it just took like a regular person to be the hero. And I think that's the real danger, is thinking that you have to like find the conspiracy to prove the Bible true. And we see that now, even now, with QAnon and like Kennedy coming back from the dead. But that's crazy. I never made like the link that we were doing it even then, but it was just
we were doing it. There's always a catalyst, right? And when this first boom happened, this bubble popped, if you will, it was in preparation for Y2K. Just like the bubble that popped with current day conspiracy was the election of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And the quote unquote drain the swamp, right? The veil lifted, quote unquote, is that the higher echelons of society and politics are controlling us all and sucking the blood of babies and doing sex magic rituals. And there were bits, just like all good conspiracies, there's bits of truth, right? Just like with Y2K. There was a genuine concern and fear for a computer bug to break systems that we now had become dependent on for a lot of the things that we had in everyday life. Just like the conspiracies about the government came hand in hand with the release of the flight logs on Epstein's Island and stuff like that. Like there's always a nugget of truth, and then people spin out with it, obviously, and spin out of fucking control with it. So history repeats itself. So Besides the books that Chelsea apparently loved reading, some other religious Y2K grifters included Jerry Falwell, the founder of the political group called the Moral Majority. And this was also a place where Tim LaHaye also worked, the guy who wrote those fun little books. And he was also, Jerry Falwell was a prominent televangelist. He described the Y2K issue as a, quote, judgment of God, and that, quote, Y2K may be God's instrument to shake this nation, to humble this nation, to start a revival that spreads over the face of the earth before the rapture of the church. Sounds familiar, right?
Dude, it's like you said televangelist. I'm like, oh, evil.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to make money off of it.
Yep. He began taking orders for a video titled A Christian's Guide to the Millennium Bug at $28 a copy. He also began storing food and ammunition, explaining, quote, I've got to be sure that I can persuade others not to mess with us, and encourage his followers to do the same, as Y2K could lead to the Antichrist's rise.
So this was the Antichrist thing in Y2K. I remember stuff playing into like Clinton and then Clinton's presidency potentially moving into Obama. Like the fear lasted for so fucking long, like a decade after Y2K, where people really started trying to pinpoint the signs of the Antichrist.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, we're in it. He's here now. Y2K was the Antichrist coming into power. And now we have to wait and see what he's going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. They always know how to yes and. Like, really, religious grifters are the kings and queens of improv because they can get proven in a full-blown lie, fairy tale, and fallacy, and then turn around and yes and it. And it's almost, if it wasn't so evil, it would be incredible. Another one on the list is James Dobson. Through his organization Focus on the Family, known for their violent gay conversion therapy institutions and anti-bullying campaigns, as they believe teaching children about not bullying in schools promotes homosexuality. Pardon. Dobson emphasized the importance of preparing for the potential Y2K fallout by purchasing some of his survival kits.
Make money off of,
Always, girl.
Also, I bet I could ruin this guy's day by saying happy holidays, and that's how I anti-bully.
Yep, that's true. That's true. Gary North, a Christian Reconstructionist writer and economist. Thank you. North was among the most vocal about the Y2K scare, predicting catastrophic outcomes and preaching sovereign citizenship for people to protect themselves. He authored numerous articles, books, and websites on the topic, pushing for the most intense preparation. North's apocalyptic predictions were driven by his desire to see the collapse of the modern state and the rise of a theocratic society.
Okay. I thought it was going to be like a collapse of the modern state and then like anarchy. I'm like, all right, kind of cool.
I mean,
but then theocracy.
Yeah.
Lost me at the end there.
Yeah. He's a Christian Reconstructionist.
Yeah.
Apparently those things are interlinked.
Sovereign citizenship would be a fun episode.
Oh my God. Could you imagine?
I used to be so obsessed with watching sovereign citizens getting pulled over. That was like my thing.
Are still some of my favorite videos to watch.
Oh, they're fun because it's a wholesome concept of like not cooperating with the police, but also being an idiot. Because if you turn left hard enough, you end up on the right, and vice versa. If you turn right hard enough, you end up on the left. And a sovereign citizen is doing that. They're like, fuck the police, but not for the cool reasons. Yeah, a sovereign citizen is ACAB, but they hate Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly.
That. Yeah. Yeah,
the anti-Semitism.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So another name on the list is Jack Van Impe. Known for his end-time predictions, Van Impe said that people need to get right with God and prepare for the end.
He has the voice of a demon who they're like, pick a fucking name to go end the world. He's like, oh, just Jack Van Impe.
I imagine he's on like a ball
comic
gag.
book villain.
Yeah.
That's a guy who wears a nice suit and then has like the Rocky Horror Picture Show like corset and everything underneath. And he goes home to get the shit kicked out of him by his wife.
I feel like Jack Van Imp is Channing Tatum's character for This Is the End, where he's like the little sex slave.
Yeah, that's Jack Van Imp.
Yeah.
But also like a crazy sadist.
Mm-hmm.
Like just so mean to women and men who are skinny.
Yeah, but that's why he gets his balls stepped on.
Yeah.
So it all checks out.
Because at the end of the day, he's still a disappointment to his father.
Mm-hmm. He sold books that provided his interpretations of the Y2K bug within the context of biblical prophecy and the end times. He sold videos and DVDs that further elaborated on his end times views because of Y2K. His ministry published newsletters and other written materials that provided updates, insights, and predictions about Y2K and related prophetic events. But, spoiler alert, as we're fucking sitting here today, what actually happened? This is a quote from a Forbes article on Y2K. A philosophy professor named Dennis Dutton later wrote, quote, "Champagne and skyrockets were the only explosions of interest since telephones, ATMs, cars, computers, and airplanes worked just fine." Here are some accounts of the minor oopsies that happened on Y2K. There was a man in Germany who on January 1st, 2000 had $6 million in his bank account momentarily.
They dangled a carrot.
I know it. With the transaction for the interest on his account dating back to December 30th, 1899, the bank was calculating all the interest that had compounded since that date, aka making him a millionaire when he actually wasn't. And of course, there was the potential for the opposite problem where the computer reads 2000 as 1900 and calculates the interest backwards, and now people wake up to seeing a massive amount of money overdrafted in their account. Nuclear power plants in Japan, say that 10 times fast, started to have alarms go off just after midnight because of the same numbers bug, but nothing happened, just alarms. In Australia, a machine that printed bus tickets got the date wrong.
Mother of God.
The world is ending.
Yeah.
In Italy, some prison inmates briefly had their sentences extended by a century.
Well.
You know. In England, a tide gauge failed, but it was fine. Nothing happened.
What's a tide gauge? Like it tells how the water levels?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was thinking like a tide.
Like a Tide Pod. That's great.
Tide Pod. Smooth brain.
It's okay. That's from eating all the Tide Pods.
Yeah.
In the US, a spy satellite ran on a backup system for a few hours. In Hong Kong, police breathalyzer equipment stopped working.
Hell yeah.
You think about like on New Year's Day, it's probably like the worst day for a breathalyzer to not work.
So it's like, I'm just having a stroke. I am not fucked up.
Yep. Around the world, cash registers here and there spat out the dates as 1900, so kind of just a cute little thing. The Commonwealth of Edison sent an electric bill for $7 million to the village of, how would you say this? Oswego, Illinois?
Yeah. Oh, that's cute. That's fun. It's a fun little mix-up.
Right. And again, just due to them not upgrading their computers to prevent the Y2K issue.
Yeah, that's silly.
Taxi meters in Singapore malfunctioned. In Sweden, computer systems used by police to generate temporary passports failed to work at 3 airports.
Oh, that is inconvenient.
Big time inconvenience there.
Yeah.
The first leap year of the new millennium, February 29, 2000, and the following day, March 1st, 2000, saw minor issues. Around 4,000 electronic terminals in New Zealand couldn't authenticate transactions correctly.
My uncle was right.
He did predict that. A newborn in Denmark was initially registered as 100 years old due to the computer number bug.
Little Rip Van Winkle.
But for the most part, nothing happened. There were some minor glitches, but the world's computer systems transitioned smoothly into the new millennium. Ultimately, while many of these fears did not materialize due to the extensive efforts by the government and businesses around the world, the Y2K scare remains a notable example of widespread anxiety induced by what we would now call grifters.
Yeah, isn't it funny how it's like these people are supposed to be the religious authority doing exactly what the Antichrist is said to want to do, which is
take advantage of people?
Yeah, spout lies as truth. to make you follow the wrong cause.
Yeah.
So interesting.
And you want to know what I always think is fun too, whenever we talk about religious grifters and, taking money from people by lying to them and tricking them so they could continue to get richer. And you might know it or you can look it up. There's like a Bible quote, and I think it's like Matthew or whatever, but it's like one of the few like lighthearted little, not lighthearted, but it's something on the lines of Jesus saying, a camel is more likely to fit through a needle than a rich man into heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very fun.
Yeah, Matthew 19:24. I'll say it again. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God.
I was so fucking close. I even got the name of it right, bitch. Dude, see,
you did.
Read your Bible, bitch. Read your Bible, bitch. On you. And I just think that's a really fun one because it's one of the few times you have the Bible saying in basically black and white, like, I'm going to tell this as a joke in a jokey fashion so you don't get the option or opportunity to misinterpret the context. I'm telling you being rich is fucking evil.
Yeah.
Period.
No
point
ethical
blank.
billionaires. Yep. No ethical millionaires.
And it's always the people who think that they sit upon the golden throne of God themselves on earth that are out here spreading misinformation, disinformation, creating paranoia and anxiety, scaring people into giving them money, which is what we saw with Y2K. And it was so prominent and so extreme and so heavy that not only the televangelists were doing this and peddling this, but it was rubbing off onto like CNN and NBC. Like all of these news stations were peddling like and fear mongering, and it all comes back down to televangelist grifters.
Well, and it's frustrating too, because then you get this perception of when real things happen, like COVID, no one knew what was going on, but there was always that like common thread of people being like, the media is exaggerating this.
Yeah.
And it emboldens so much misinformation about things like vaccines specifically. And then you see like the fallout of now you have a president who's saying that the media is lying to you, which, it is what it is. Like, I don't necessarily believe that we're hearing the full truth either, but then it's such a pendulum, right? Yeah. Y2K blown out of proportion, COVID maybe not taken seriously enough.
Yeah, exactly. In one way it swings hard, in the other it'll swing the opposite. It's crazy. But I think we wouldn't be living in today's society if we didn't have like the grifting of Y2K. Like truly, it was the first time in history, in like modern history, where we saw this change. Yeah. And it changed the landscape of how we interpret and receive news and information and fact versus fiction.
Yeah. And how, I don't know, man, that would be cool to do like potential antichrist throughout history, because there's so many people who have been hit with that label that it would be interesting to maybe do like a deep dive on what the signs are and who's fit into those signs so far.
Yeah, I mean, one day we'll have to actually sit with the book of Revelation, honestly. It's just such a meaty, hefty little guy.
I recently got into a little bit of a series talking about the book of Revelations, not necessarily saying that it's a prediction, but more of a description. And that was an interesting, fun thing. But it did put me in the idea of like, damn, this would be a fun episode.
Yeah. There's also like the banned books of the Bible that we've always talked about as well.
Yeah. We've kind of done that in sets. It would be good to just wrap them all up. Yeah. So that it's easier to digest.
And there's a bunch of crazy shit out there, girl. So anyway, that's Y2K, and I hope we all learned something.
Yeah, I learned that everything goes back to Zoroastrianism, which is a workout for my mouth to say
always. It doesn't matter how many times we say it. I still have to write it out so phonetically and insanely because I'm like, what the fuck is that word?
Yep.
But if you want to find things that are easier than reading the word Zoroastrianism, you can go to the link tree in all of our bios. We are at Go to Hell Podcast. I am at Noelle Fain. That is at Sithlard. And in those link trees, you can find a link to our Patreon. $1 gets you in. Fun episode this week. I think we're back. We're off the depression train, at least for you guys, because we're still on it actually physically. But back on fun talking shit vibes, which is always good. So $1 gets you in. You can also find a link to our merch. 100% of proceeds are donated. You can find a link to our Discord server. You can find a link to Kelly Holloran or at Wildwood Owl on Etsy. She makes cool shit for us and she makes cool shit in general. So go check her out. You can find a link to our YouTube, motherfuckers. Go comment on that and bully us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, whatever the fuck you're supposed to do there. And we also have all of our resource links up still, which include donating to the people in Gaza. And I don't know why you would need it, but just in case, that link's there. That link is there too, which is a link to listen to us, which is anywhere podcasts are heard. Great.
Nice.
I am going to go ahead and give a hail to the very much habit-forming ZzzQuil.
That's a good one.
If that's available, I'm going to buy that instead of Benadryl, but we'll see what Mama gets.
I'm going to say hail Puffin because he walked in to get scritches for me right at the end of this episode. And as a dog that hates me, it's nice for him to come say hi.
That's a big win.
Yeah, it is.
Well, you enjoy those scratches. I'm going to go drink myself into a coma. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Okay, bye.
Bye.